I wonder if there's going to be music coming next door for this one. I'm sure we'll survive, and hopefully they can hear me. Hopefully you can hear me. That's what I meant to say. So in July of this year, we held a in-situ resource utilization workshop at USRA headquarters in Maryland. And this was to sort of get a sense from the community, and using the term community to be very broad, get a sense of what interest was out there. And we had over 370 registrants, because this was supposed to have occurred in February, but thanks to the federal government, there was no federal government at the time we were supposed to have this. So we postponed it till July. And we had just over 200 of those 370 show up. So that wasn't too shabby. I was hoping it would be a little bit more than that. But before I get started, though, I talked a little bit yesterday about Larry Taylor. There is a special issue of Geochimica, Cosmic Chimica Acta that is out now. It's online, but as of December 1st, when this issue is going to be officially out, there will be 2 months where it's free downloads of all the papers from the Elsevier website. There will be a notification that goes out on the Lunar Listserv. If you're not part of the Lunar Listserv, send me an email or call me and give me your email and I'll add you. This is actually, subjects of these papers just sort of mirror what Larry's research interests were. So there's certainly a lot of lunar papers in there. And again, it turned out to show just what big of an effect he had on the community. So back to the workshop. So as I said, it was in July of this year in USRA headquarters. And again, it was an international group that came together, including the United States, which I didn't put up there because I assumed that everybody would know there would be people from the US there. But there were people from the United States there, as you can tell from my Northern Indiana accent. So also represented were government, commercial, and academic institutions, all coming together to actually focus upon the in-situ resource utilization at the moon. So, and again, very diverse communities as well as nationalities were represented. And let's just put it this way, there were some language barriers between the different communities, especially with the terrestrial mining industry. And we had to sort of get leveled as to what was the, what terms meant in one community is not necessarily what they meant in another one. And again, is a very broad interest as shown by the different disciplines that were represented at this workshop. So I'm just going to dive straight into some of the findings. These are not the complete findings. Draft workshop report was finished at 7:45 a.m. this morning. And that should be available, first of all, to all the participants to comment on. Then it will be on the LEAG website. But the big thing is that, all right, we don't have the ability by 2024 to use the resources of the moon in support of Artemis. But we need to start defining architectures that would be able to use them in the future. Whether or not we have to bring them with us in the first couple of missions or not, but we certainly need to think ahead and think forward for the potential that could be there in terms of enabling humans to survive and thrive on the surface of the moon. And this was the big issue. We had terrestrial mining companies there, and they said, well, we're just coming along just to see what's happening. We're not really interested. And we're not really interested because where's the market? If we get involved and create products, who's going to buy it? At what price? And how is that going to help our business? And it was, light goes off. There is no market for lunar resource products. So how are we going to fix that? But in order to get the commercial side involved, this issue, amongst several others, needs to be addressed. And again, a commitment to human permanence on the lunar surface is one that will go a long way to publishing that really needs to be stated here. So the other thing that comes out is this basic information. Where are the basic maps? We have very good global data sets for the moon, but they are not presented in a way that would allow mining companies to relatively easily look at the resource potential, even if there were markets there. So we've got to think then about the how that would be done, whether it involves the USGS in the United States to actually build those products and get them out there available. I think we have the basic data sets to be able to do this, but this is something that is a risk reduction activity in order to enable the commercial participation. The other thing was NASA has been very good at stovepiping. Well, I can't do that because that's exploration, or I can't do that because that's science. So in looking at this, if we look at the critically needed data, they're needed to understand the resources for exploration and potentially commercial, but also a lot of the data are critical for understanding the science of these different deposits. So again, CLIPS missions we've heard a lot about this morning, and I think that we start looking at demonstrating ISRU potential. We're going to get data that are going to be very important. And so when I got stranded in Chicago O'Hare Airport for a little while, I had too much time on my hand, and I started thinking about what types of data would you need to have in order to look at the lunar volatile resources and look at their potential, i.e., are these resources actually reserves? And in my way of looking at things, most of the data that you would need for science, you would need for exploration and commerce. Very overlapping data sets in order to assess the resource potential, but very overlapping data sets to understand, well, where did these deposits come from? How renewable are they? When did they form? So on and so forth. So there's a lot. It sort of breaks down the barriers between science exploration, but then it also enables commerce. So you can see at the top there, science enables exploration and exploration enables science, but both will enable the commercial entities to get involved in this particular venture. So another one of the findings, we need to sort of look at power, and I'm glad to hear that this morning, talk about reviewing the power needs, and Nikki mentioned that very well. And this is what came out of when we were talking to the commercial sector about their mining activities. Power is going to be needed, and we may need to think bigger than what we're thinking of right now. So I think that that's something that if we're going to get serious about using the resources and mining and refining them, the power issue needs to be thought about right now. Again, what about operations and maintenance? Now, I know there's some commercial entities out there that are thinking about this, how you're going to operate and maintain. But in the commercial terrestrial mining sector, operation and maintenance of a working mine is non-trivial. And again, if it's off planet, it's even more non-trivial. And it was suggested by some of the mining companies there that we really hadn't thought this through enough and needed to think about that a little bit more. Development of lunar ISRU could speed up the development of a Martian ISRU, as there is significant feed-forward potential. I attended the Affording Mars workshop last year, and I suggested that we need to focus on the synergies between the lunar and Mars communities rather than fight against each other, because if we're dealing with ISRU, we know there's water ice on the moon, and we know there's water ice on Mars. So if we can develop a system that will work at both locations, everybody wins. But we still need to prove the potential. And again, this nomenclature, the language barrier between the commercial mining, terrestrial mining companies and others out there needs to be looked at. And I was pleased to see, when I was in Luxembourg a couple of weeks ago at their Space Resources Week, and the nomenclature is being thought about there. And they're starting to come up with the terms that can be used both with planetary scientists, commercial entities, government entities, so on and so forth, when dealing with the in situ resource utilization issues and development of space resources. So this is starting to happen. I'm not saying it's there yet, but a good start has been made by our European colleagues. So what we also did there was something that was a bit different, and it's a shameless copy of what James Carpenter did with the European Space Agency workshop, and that was to try and get the audience to participate through the use of the Mentimeter. So throughout the 2.5-day workshop, 3-day workshop, we actually had 14 questions that we wanted the audience to look at. They would go to a URL, type in a code, and then the questions would be there for them to look at, and they could give their responses. So we got a variety of different responses that came in that were quite informative. But I'm only going to report 8 of these ones due to time. And again, I think the final report, the draft is done, but the final report I hope to be out in a couple of weeks. So what should be the priority objective related to lunar ISRU for Artemis? And then you could see the results there from the audience that came in for that. And again, lunar science and resource prospecting. This is going to be a theme. Rank these challenges for PSR source propellant. And you can see there that you've got 2 that do a political will being one, but shortly followed by geologic knowledge. We need to understand what these PSRs actually are. Can we get in there? Can we actually use or extract those potential resources there? And then what elements of strategic ISRU-related advice would you provide to NASA and the community as we embark on the Artemis program? And you can see there is a word cloud that we really need to think about the propellant issue through water, solar power, again, comes up. But again, this is something that is the potential that we need to try and realize as we go forward to the moon. Which characteristics are most critical to ISRU excavation and processing at scale? And you can see there's no winner. We've got to think of a lot of things here before we actually start moving the bulk regolith and trying to refine it to get the materials that we potentially can use. And then again, one of the most understudied major problems we will encounter when producing feedstock for manufacturing fuels and propellants on the moon. Again, no clear winner, but there's a lot of things to think about as we move forward. This is not going to be easy, but we now have, I think, the will, and we have the technology to actually starting addressing at least some of these things. And then what are the 3 takeaway messages you have learned at this workshop? And this was just a free-form thinking, but you could see what comes out as being the winner by the size of the font: ground truth for prospecting, simulants, collaboration, so on and so forth. Again, the takeaway messages that the people got from the Lunar ISRU workshop. So what are the next steps? Well, what would a lunar prospecting campaign look like? And it has to be a campaign. You don't do prospecting on Earth with one mission. So it has to be a campaign, and the collaboration with commercial rovers, maybe international partnerships, public-private partnerships, could actually allow a campaign to be put together. And I think we have to advocate for a campaign if we're going to have resources be credible for sustaining human life off planet. It's going to have to be a campaign because we know from the orbital data there's more than one site to go explore for these. And again, the data that we get is going to enable science, it's going to enable exploration, and it's going to enable commercial involvement. So trying to break down the barriers between the mission directorates is one way to look at this, because it's not going to be a science mission, because the data will enable exploration and commerce. If it's a commercial prospecting mission, that's going to enable science and exploration. So this is the thing to sort of think about. Resources could be the unifying banner that we hold up to bring us all together towards a common goal. And again, what about public-private partnerships for resource prospecting? I think these are the things we need to think outside the box. Steve Clark, Chris Culbertson, Ben, and Jake are thinking outside the box, and that's pretty impressive. But it's a whole new world now, and I think we need to give them support and help them to think further outside the box, if you like, in order to get this resource prospecting campaign on track, and so that these resources can be shown, or hopefully shown, to be actual reserves. Then continue dialogue with agencies about creating markets. Coming back to one of the first findings, if you want to get terrestrial mining companies involved, what's the market for the product? And right now, this is still, we still don't know. So we need to think this through, and through effective communication between all the stakeholders, as I can use some NASA parlance there, we can then actually make this happen. And then there's a lot of interest throughout the world now in space resources. Luxembourg has become center in Europe in terms of for the focus of companies and commercial entities involved in resource utilization and resource extraction. Australia is now awake, and with their terrestrial mining industry that they could bring to bear, that's going to be huge. The same with Canada. Natural Resources Canada are very interested in this. They were well represented at our workshop. The world is alive to this idea and the potential, but we have to show if these resources are reserves. Can we actually extract them? Can we refine them? Can we do it economically? We don't know. We've got to get on the ground, and we've got to go prospecting to show the grade of the ore body, and not just what's there, but what can be extracted. And it becomes very important to where the Moon to Mars program is going to go, whether or not that can be done economically, and we can get commercial involvement there. So the idea that some of us have been kicking around is an international lunar or space resources workshop in 2020 to bring everybody together to talk, hopefully, the same language about using lunar and space resources to enable a whole new sector of the economy that we've just dreamed about right now. Thank you very much.
Can you go back to your last word cloud slide?
Nope.
Well, I noted that one of the smaller words in that was realism.
Yes. Only a little bit.
I'm not sure what that means, actually.
Well, Dean, you tell me. You're the one that always brings realism to my thoughts. So,
well, it's almost like that's like a minor part of the discussion, and I think that's probably not good. I mean, we got to be realistic about this, or we're just going to go down a primrose path.
Well, we've got to be realistic about it, but we need to be realistic about it on the basis of data.
Yes.
And right now we have great data sets from orbit, but we still can't tell if those resources are reserves. Until we can do that, then we're living the dream. So I think we need, that's the most critical thing. Are these resources reserves? All right, thank you.